Hey guys, it's Dean. Alright, let's cut to the chase. Kiddy Kong gets way more hate than he deserves. Dixie Kong, being the main protagonist of this game alone, makes it awesome. The soundtrack, changing hands from David Wise to Evelyn Fisher, is the biggest non-issue I've ever seen exaggerated in gaming, and Donkey Kong Country 3 is just as good as its predecessors. Should Kiddy Kong have been Donkey Kong to allow for the trilogy to complete the triangle and have the duo save Diddy Kong? Probably. Would I still have chosen Dixie Kong more than Donkey Kong if he was the other character? Definitely. Is the music in this game drastically worse than the previous two games? Heck no. There are a lot of soundtracks in this game that are so fitting in the setting and environment. The aesthetics are absolutely gorgeous, and in my opinion are the perfect combination between the realistic vibes felt during the first title and the wackier, more arcadey feel of the second game. There are stages with gimmicks and puzzles and challenges that are so much more interesting and less repetitive than the previous games in the series. Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie's Double Trouble, is, in its own right, a part of the original trilogy, and should be revered in the same manner the first two games are. I have virtually no memory of this game, by the way, nor any nostalgia for it. The only memory I can think of was being at my friend's grandma's house in the mid to late 90s and seeing a show on TV with some guy discussing video games, talking about Donkey Kong Country 3 and Yoshi's Island. I'm pretty sure this memory predates G4 TV, or Tech TV as it used to be known before. I have no idea what it was, but it was basically the first experience I ever had watching video game content on television. Like many others, by the time this game released, my family had already moved on to the Nintendo 64. Actually, I feel about DKC 3 the same way I feel about Mario Party 3. The timing of its release, being side by side with the next generation of consoles, made me completely skip over it and as a result, not play it for what felt like the first 15 to 20 years, despite often revisiting its predecessors. With this video, it's actually only my second playthrough of this game. The first time I played it was on the Game Boy Advance version a few years ago. I thought it was okay at the time, but I think playing it right after the first two games and not pausing to write a script or analyze my thoughts burned me out. Plus, I very much was blindly following the general opinion I saw about this game from content creators online, and I accepted it just might not be a good title. This time, however, I came in with a purpose. I took a break between games and was itching to get in with this title with a fresh view and more excitement to really understand what it was about this game that made it so bad. And as a result, I figured out Kiddy was never the problem. Everyone else was. I'm not really going to delve too deep into the music and aesthetics, which shouldn't really surprise you if you keep up with my channel. I think the game looks and sounds really good and lives up to the other games in the trilogy. I thought my lack of nostalgia for the music would lower it a few pegs in my estimation, but nope, I think it's totally acceptable, and as far as aesthetics, I'll repeat that I think the environments in this game take the best of both DKC 1 and 2 and apply them into a great mix into DKC 3. The setting and theme of this game is one of the strong suits in my opinion. You've had King K. Rool, Captain K. Rool, and now you have Baron K. Roolenstein, a mad doctor up to no good. I like that K. Rool just casually cosplays a different persona in each game, and with every midlife crisis career change he experiences, his army of baddies has to follow suit and just accept that they're now part of his new persona. Meanwhile, the Kongs just show up like, "Hi, can you stop kidnapping our friends and stealing our bananas?" Speaking of which, there's a whole thing about the bananas in this game having magical powers or whatever. There's a bit more to the story and lore that I'm not really interested in going into because I don't really care about stories in these classic games. Or the quips, or the jokes made by Cranky, or the Brothers Bear, or whatever. And I feel the same about completion of this game as I did in the previous titles, as in I don't really care much for it either. As far as I'm concerned, I play Donkey Kong Country series as a platformer first and everything else is pretty secondary. And it's secondary enough where I don't really plan on discussing it any further. Anyway, with K. Roolenstein, there comes a mad scientist theme in the game that's actually really enjoyable. Throughout the stages, you'll see baddies that look like they were literally experimented on and basically cyborgs by this point. Some of them even involve some kind of extra thinking to defeat. It's that bit of extra brainpower that makes me enjoy this game. I think the best way to exemplify it is a collection of the DK coins. Which, I totally get that I just said I wasn't going to talk about full completion, but grabbing a few DK coins or visiting a few bonus areas isn't really full completion. In order to grab a DK coin, you have to find a way to strike these fellas with a barrel. The trick is they're always shielded towards the direction you're standing, so you have to find a way to make the barrel strike them from the back. These puzzles start off simply enough, but in later stages you'll find yourself scratching your head on how to accomplish them. I think I might have had to look up one or two of these puzzles because of their difficulty, and I was totally okay with that. If you've watched my previous two videos, you can expect a similar type of advancement throughout this game. There are repeating themes, but as the themes repeat, the stages get a bit trickier and add in a few more gimmicks and challenges to make them a bit more enticing, giving you what I would consider a properly established difficulty curve. This time, however, the gimmicks stick out a little more than in the previous games. So rather than just do the same generic description of stages in the different settings, I think I'd much rather pick a few levels that involve specific gimmicks or challenges and talk about those. You can assume any level that I didn't mention to just be a general Donkey Kong Country level or a repeat of a gimmick and with just a bit more challenge. Which is fine, but I don't see a point in discussing them. In World 1, your first unique level is Doorstop Dash. It's the second level of the game, and I imagine for most people that just want to play a basic platformer and move through the game, this has almost certainly turned them off from the game way too early on. You need to maneuver around the stage and find handles that'll open doors for a brief moment of time in order to allow you to advance. Progression requires both exploration and timing, and I think it makes the stage more interesting as a result. Another level set in the same setting in World 1 is Murky Mill. In this level, you control Ellie, an elephant that basically replaced Rambi, which I'm guessing is the second instance of rage that DKC fans face. Ellie is not Rambi, nor is she meant to be Rambi. Heck, you probably could have had both in the game and it wouldn't feel redundant. But because we went from big and powerful Rambi to scared of mice Ellie, everyone had to make a big deal about it. But when you remove the preconceived notions, Ellie is actually a pretty good addition to the challenges in this game. In Murky Mill, she needs to defeat the rats in order to advance, and can only be done by sneaking up on them. Otherwise she'll freak out and run in the opposite direction. I mean really, you're basically getting a Metal Gear Solid game mixed with a Donkey Kong game. What more could you ask for? Barrel Shield Bust Up requires you to use a shield on a rope to climb through the treetops, which is a fun new challenge that wasn't really done in the previous games. Riverside Race is a straight up time trial with a straight up timer in the bottom corner. Squeals on Wheels is similar to the first two mill levels I described, only this time you have to kill these rats on the wheels with barrels to advance and actually have to explore a bit to figure out how to advance. If it wasn't clear, I'm a really big fan of these mill levels. Bobbing Barrel Brawl is really fun. You have to use Ellie to throw barrels into the water at various increments to avoid falling into the water. And again, I have to reiterate how good I think Ellie's implementation was in this game. Tracker Barrel Trek gets a shout out for having a good barrel gimmick, a good implementation of Ellie's spitting water ability, a gorgeous environment in these waterfall themed levels, and a pretty good DK coin puzzle to boot. Fish Food Frenzy is probably my favorite one though. You have this fish following you and you need to swim close to other fish to feed it. If you don't feed it, it'll slowly turn red and eventually attack you. If you feed it the wrong food, it also yields the same result. Some of the most stress-inducing moments I experienced in this game, actually in the series, were in this level. Blazing Bazookas gives you a fun and unique challenge due to these baddies firing barrels at you. You'll have to avoid the TNT barrels, jump on the regular ones to get across the gaps. At some point, you're also treated with Squirter the Spider, who is probably my favorite animal buddy in the series by this point. His ability to spit out web projectiles and create platforms for himself to use make him the perfect buddy for this level. Immediately after you get to Low G Labyrinth, which is so cool strictly because of how the low gravity gimmick works. It's nothing too spectacular or different, but it's the first time something like this is done in a main stage, so it stands out quite a bit. Next you have Crackshot Croc, which basically turns you into a target of a shooter. You need to traverse through the level and take cover away from the crosshair before Croc shoots a fireball at you. Buzzer Barrage requires you to use Quawks, the animal buddy without a projectile ability, to drop steel barrels onto baddies to advance through the stage. In some cases, however, you can't directly drop the barrel onto a baddie, so you need to find a way to make it roll into them to advance. Confused Cliffs ups the ante by forcing you to speed up the cliffs while the rope you're on slowly burns towards you. Floodlit Fish requires you to control Unguard to slam into these glowing fish to traverse through the dark underwater level. By the way, I love the look of these underwater stages. They rival the ones from the first game, and the ambiance is better in this title in my opinion. Pothole Panic makes a fun run through a level requiring the use of 4 different animal buddies to advance, each holding their own challenge along the way. Ropey Rumpus isn't what I would consider super unique, but man is it hard to get through the first time you play it. Creepy Caverns literally contains ghost barrels. Lightning Lookout sees you literally trying to avoid being struck by lightning. Poisonous Pipeline is a swimming level that reverses the right and left directions, which similar to the gravity level is such a neat and unique gimmick that it alone makes it worth a mention. All of those levels takes you through the main game, and the extra area, or Lost World of this game, is known as Krematoa, which contains some of the most challenging levels of the game by far, and a second boss battle against K. Rubenstein. Phew, that was a lot to go through. I mentioned way more stages than I thought I would, and I think that's just a testament to just how unique and challenging this game can be if you go into it in the right mindset. And I didn't even discuss the boss battles, which continue on the trend of DKC2 and being unique and fun battles. The fight against Baron K. Rubenstein is cool too, and the varying phases of the fight, you actually have to try a little bit harder than in the previous 2 games. I know people like to crap on this game for the story, or Kitty, or whatever else is in the flavor of the week at the time, but honestly, if you're looking at it for face value, I think it's actually a better all-around experience than the first 2 titles. The reason I say that is because pretty much every type of stage gimmick or challenge or explanation aspect that was seen in the first 2 games is done again here, and then some. The upgraded visuals is so blatantly obvious, the unique mad scientist theme and all these deranged baddies as a result, and all of the crazy puzzles I ran through in the stages makes for such a memorable experience that quite frankly amazes me that this game doesn't get more praise. There might be something to be said about the story, minimal cutscenes, music, and even completion challenges that might make someone prefer the previous 2 titles over this one, and I'm not going to pretend I care enough about any of those aspects to make an argument for or against DKC3, but what I do know is that sitting down and playing through all of these stages felt good. Like, really good. As good, if not better, than the previous 2 games. I left off Donkey Kong Country 2's video wondering whether or not I personally could group the 3rd game with the first 2, and I can honestly say that I absolutely can. The next time I want to get my Donkey Kong fill, I might just play this game first so I don't burn out on the first 2 games before I experience this one. Actually, for any viewers watching it, if you haven't played DKC in a while, I recommend doing just that. Play the 3rd game. You might find a new appreciation for it. Or if it's your first time playthrough, you might find the same appreciation for it that I found. I don't really think DKC 3 is so much drastically better than the first 2 games that it makes that much of a difference to rank them, but I do think it's better than the first 2 games enough that I can say with confidence that it's a minor improvement on DKC 1 and 2. And why wouldn't it be? In the same vein that Sonic and Mario managed to make their games better as they moved along, I firmly believe Rare managed to create a game with improvements over its predecessors. At the end of the day though, my opinion is still that all 3 DKC games are close enough in quality that ranking them seems pointless. The only reason I'm saying the 3rd is better is because it's been hated for so many years that I think it's worth pointing out that I do indeed find it better. But at the end of the day, I love this whole trilogy. And the improvements are so minor across the series that I would always recommend playing all 3 of them. I recently did a Mario vs Sonic series where I stated Sonic 3 and Mario World are my favorite titles of the classics. If I was doing a tier system, those 2 games would be S ranks, and Mario 3 and Sonic 2 would be just under them. Well, all 3 DKC games would be S ranks as well. I can't in good conscience place them anywhere else, because these games released at the peak of 2D platforming. It's a good thing we switched over to the 3rd dimension shortly after because I don't think we could have really improved much more after the Donkey Kong Country games back in the 90s. Anyway, that's all I really have to say. I will continue my journey through Rare on Nintendo 64. I'm not sure when, for now I really just want to play Sonic Frontiers, but I haven't decided if I want to do a video on it. So I can't really give you guys a heads up or a hint of what's to come at this moment because I haven't really decided yet. All I can say is I hope you subscribe so you're kept in the loop, and you should totally share my videos with your friends and family that are into video games as a Christmas gift to me. As always, thanks for watching. Dean, out.